The year is 2023. The LEGO Group is one of the most successful toy companies out there today, making products catering to both kids and adults with an abundance of licenses and original themes. The LEGO Group is more popular and successful than ever. But what if things took a bit of a different turn in the early 2000s, where LEGO products would have looked a little less like this and a little more like this? This is the story of Project Genesis, an ambitious, failed project that would have completely reimagined the LEGO Group's product offerings around the early 2000s if its premier product line, LEGO Galador in 2002, did not utterly and completely fail upon launch. This is LEGO History, and I'm your host, Duckbricks. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and let's go. Before we get into what exactly Project Genesis was, it's important to step back and take a look at some context behind its inception and examine a specific era the LEGO Group was experiencing. The year was 1995, and creative directors over at Advance, a Danish advertising agency, were preparing their next pitch for LEGO executives, and it had to be a big one. Stepping backwards a bit, Advance as a company was originally formed in 1976 to specifically work on LEGO projects, starting off with print-oriented advertisements like box art, packaging design, in-store materials, and LEGO catalogs, but eventually branching out to experimenting with different types of advertising methods, like TV commercials. By the early 1990s, Advance had become an integral part of LEGO's advertising portfolio, staging international productions shot in California that blended different LEGO themes in creative advertisements shown on TV around the world. It was also around this time that Advance began to get more and more involved in the conceptual development of new LEGO themes, products, and ideas. Jeppe Fonsbach, who started his tenure at Advance and LEGO by creating and managing the ill-fated Snap line, but eventually went on to develop LEGO Universe and now the 18+ LEGO Adults Icons line of today, stated that around this time, we found that we could create better, baked-in communication when we had been involved in developing the products as well. For example, making the packaging a part of the story, or connecting product features to the storyline and campaign. Since then, Advance served a crucial role in developing many of LEGO's major releases and campaigns, from LEGO Friends in 2012 to the adult-oriented Icons line of today. But going all the way back to 1995, Advance art director Christian Faber and his team had just developed a radical new pitch that had the potential to change the direction of LEGO as a company, and, if successful, would have resulted in a radical new vision for the Danish toy manufacturer. Since the 1980s, Christian Faber had worked on a number of LEGO themes, advertisements, and campaigns, from Time Cruisers to Aquazone, but is most famous for creating a little toy line that many of you probably know him from. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Faber was just at the beginning of a long journey telling original stories with LEGO, and that finally brings us to his radical new concept. It was the summer of 1995, and Christian Faber was hard at work. He had gathered up some LEGO Technic elements, mashing them together with sculpting clay to form buildable figures with unique molded arms, legs, and heads, but bodies and structural components made out of LEGO. The goal? To see if it was possible to make a posable, sturdy action figure out of LEGO bricks. Working with his assistant, Jan Kjaer, Faber presented the full theme to executives at LEGO he called Cybots. The story? A group of cybernetic robots had been sent deep beneath Earth's crust to mine mysterious energy crystals. But a contingent of these Cybots eventually rebelled against their creators, and a battle would break out between these rebels and those still loyal to humanity. Sound familiar? It's because these exact story beats would essentially form the template of another original LEGO theme, Exoforce, in 2006. And the setting would be transplanted onto another LEGO theme beyond that, Rock Raiders in 1999, and 10 years later with Power Miners in 2009. All themes Advance would go on to work on. In fact, LEGO had been flirting with the idea of an underground exploration theme already since the early 1990s, fully developing an underground-inspired space theme that was cancelled for being too similar to the underwater mining setting of Aqua Raiders and replaced with Explorians in 1996. And yet, prototypes for drill bits and other specialized mining equipment abounded at LEGO Futura, a special product development department that was responsible for stuff like the first LEGO train rails, gears, and so much more. But the enduring legacy of the Cybots pitch was not its underground setting or the themes of the story. It was instead the concept of making action figures out of LEGO. The goal for Cybots, and really any other action figure LEGO theme, was to help young kids, particularly young boys, who are inexperienced with building LEGO to be introduced to the brand with a different kind of play.
Each new specialized molded element, like the arms or legs, could be connected via some sort of a knob or coupling to other existing LEGO elements. There was even a concept to sell them completely unpainted, venturing into a completely different form of toy where kids could paint and customize each figure themselves. And the core tenet of constructing these figures was to make building the figure a motivator to get ready to play, rather than the building process itself being mainly the way to play with the toy. And lastly, Faber proposed that Cybots could be used as some sort of a testing ground for LEGO to experiment with new ways of communicating, conceptualizing CD-ROM Cybot games, 3D building instructions, and so much more. Many concepts that would eventually be integrated into standard LEGO portfolios years down the line. LEGO executives were thrilled with the pitch. It was the most exciting, radical, and innovative new idea they had heard in a while. In a time where LEGO was reaching at new concepts and trying to reinvent themselves as a company, Cybots was the perfect pitch to serve as a foray into a brand new building system, blending LEGO construction with action figures, or Construction for short. To support this new system, a new type of connection had to be developed. And so, Faber and his team simply looked to nature, using modeling clay to craft a ball at the end of an arm slotted into a receiving socket. And so, the LEGO Ball and Socket system was born, a system still heavily in use today. Excited with this new idea, LEGO designers began work on iterating the Cybots concept into a full-on product line. Realizing the ball and socket joints suggested the feeling of robots, the team naturally proposed an outer space setting for this new construction theme, with ideas swirling in their heads of an intergalactic conflict versus an evil robotic force. And then, everything changed.
LEGO and Star Wars join forces so you can build authentic LEGO Episode 1 pod racers.
In 1999, Lucasfilm was set to reintroduce Star Wars to the big screen with Episode 1, and with that came an incredible announcement. Because, for the first time ever, the LEGO Group had finalized their first ever licensing deal, producing toys for none other than George Lucas's fantastical universe. But that's a story for another episode of LEGO history. Going back to the construction team, this announcement was not met with much excitement. In fact, it meant they had to go back to the drawing board. As concepts of battle droids began flooding LEGO HQ, intergalactic conflict with robots was not only redundant at this point, but completely off the table. But with an entire new set of molds, pieces, and elements already created, LEGO didn't want to put their investment to waste. And so, Faber was asked to work on the launch of a new line called Slicer, also known as Throwbots in the US, a line of buildable Technic action figures that launched discs. Unlike their initial grand concepts for story-based construction play, Slicer was always meant to be a short-lived novelty, a concept LEGO designers still refer to as a quote-unquote in-and-out theme, intended to last maybe a year or two to spark an exciting fad and fill in around higher-profile Big Bang themes. A recent example of this being Hidden Side, which tested out app-based AR play, which ran for a couple years concurrent to the much larger tentpole theme like Ninjago in 2020. While the launch of Slicer met some success, Faber and his team continued to dream big, realizing that these ball joints had the potential to be so much more than a theme only intended to last a couple of years at most. And with Star Wars dominating the market for interstellar robotic conflict, he decided to go in a different direction. Instead of placing Construction's robots in a high-tech, futuristic world, they would put them somewhere more archaic and primeval, like a tribal, tropical island. The rest, of course, is history. LEGO Bionicle was born, and taking inspiration from Star Wars, which focused on telling a story first and building off that to sell toys, Faber crafted a rich mythos and legend behind Bionicle, launching to incredible success in 2001 and eventually lasting nearly 10 years. And finally, that brings us to the core topic of this mini-documentary of sorts, Project Genesis. Once more taking inspiration from Star Wars, LEGO realized that action figures had been among its most successful toys, and began to wonder if the construction elements used for Slicer could support an entire system of buildable figures. And as it turned out, in a completely different part of the company, this idea was already being explored, in the form of a top-secret initiative known as Project Genesis, something not even Faber or his team at Advance were aware of when they were concurrently developing the ball joint for Bionicle. The Secret Life of LEGO Bricks book explains this best. Genesis, so named because children were going to be able to play the part of creator in a new universe, was intended to be an entirely separate line of toys consisting of no elements compatible with the LEGO system. Instead, children constructed creatures with large, molded, interchangeable heads, arms, wings, torsos, and tails. These appendages, which were sculpted to look like they came from animals, humans, robots, or even fantasy creatures, were joined to one of several central torso variants. These torsos had multiple ports for joining them together or for connecting the various appendages. Creatures could be large or small, bizarre or recognizable. Construction itself was facilitated by a brand new prototype friction hinge, which could lock into a socket, then both rotate and articulate. Far from Bionicle, which would go on to be compatible mostly with LEGO Technic parts and started off by being marketed under that LEGO Technic brand name, Genesis was separate and made up of detailed organic components meant to look like real, if not slightly fantastical, body parts. There were no studs, pins, or anything else in the entire system recognizable as LEGO DNA. These otherworldly elements were, however, just the beginning of Genesis's unique new collection of parts. On top of that foundation of articulating pieces was envisioned another layer infused with technology. First was a voice unit embedded in a neck wrap component, held in place between a creature's head and torso, allowing it to verbally speak. Even more daring was a sonic receiver integrated within another element, for which there were huge plans. You see, this piece was endowed with technology that could hear sounds tuned out by human brains, the intent being to embed signals in all manner of media, advertisements, TV shows, and more that would trigger responses in the constructed creatures. The LEGO Group planned to build a huge multimedia empire around Genesis, with video games, TV shows, commercials, live events, and more. Each of these events would be laced with audio signals, discernible by Genesis's unique sonic capabilities, allowing children and their own creations to interact directly with what they were watching. Sets would have instructions for creatures that would appear in this media and, if built, would respond to what happened to their character on screen. It was the LEGO Toys to Life idea over a decade before LEGO Dimensions, or any Toys to Life game for that matter, and far more ambitious. With Project Genesis in full force, ideas were abound throughout the LEGO company. Designer Marit Busk spoke of a concept called LEGO Beings to produce a short film rather than a few TV spots to introduce what they called LEGO Beings, which would eventually become Galador. Character development, final script, and launch plans were all part of this concept, but after 6 months, LEGO ran into budget cuts and unfortunately it never really saw the light of day. Look familiar? It's because these new ratchet joint elements and this entire system were actually launched as a major new LEGO line, in the form of the infamous LEGO Galador, Defenders of the Outer Dimension. Launched in 2002 at the peak of Bionicle's popularity, Galador was a sign that LEGO was convinced that action figure themes were the future of their brand. And on paper, the concept was brilliant. LEGO poured massive amounts of budget and effort into the theme, even individually funding a massive new TV show on Fox Kids to tie into the series. With 26 total half-hour episodes and 2 seasons, Galador was a high-concept TV show, toy line, and multimedia project that was the glorious launch of Project Genesis, incorporating many of the unique concepts for that series in one of the flagship sets, the Keck Powerizer, which was a robotic exosuit reading in signals from the TV show, speaking in the voices of different characters when specific heads were placed on it, and even serving as a gaming platform, with the arms of the suit acting as controllers for the games. If Galador succeeded, the LEGO Group was primed to take Project Genesis into a new direction for the company at large, potentially even shifting away from the core building brick and entering a lucrative new era for action figures to define the future of the LEGO Group. So obviously, this isn't quite what happened. But what exactly did happen? You see, everything was set up for Galador's success. A massive budget, a crazy, high-concept, and relatively high-budget TV show, a radical, new, never-before-seen toy line infused with the latest technology. All that was missing was, well, LEGO. You see, Galador didn't quite fit into a single category in toy aisles. Was it a LEGO building toy? Not really, because each set only had a few pieces and snapped together quickly. Was it a ready-to-play action figure line? Well, no, because you had to actually assemble the figures yourself. Was it an electronic product? Not quite, because really only one of the toys in the lineup, the Keck Powerizer, was actually integrated with the promised technology. Was it a TV show tie-in? I guess this is the closest, but the TV show wasn't nearly big or popular enough to warrant its own aisle. If this was confusing to toy retailers who are experts in the space, it was doubly confusing for the consumer. With the bright red LEGO logo hidden away in the bottom corner of the boxes, almost as if LEGO was ashamed of their own brand, the toys were not instantly recognizable as LEGO products, which by then was a brand synonymous with quality. And especially in the US, Galador was hit by something LEGO couldn't even anticipate. The network it was airing on, Fox Kids, was in the midst of being shut down due to poor ratings, with Galador being the final show airing on the dying network before the entire thing was shut down 7 months after Galador first aired. With poor brand recognition, confusion in the toy aisle, and a harsh deviation from the LEGO brand, the elements of Project Genesis that initially could have been, and should have been, the perfect storm for its success, instead all fed into its colossal downfall. Most importantly, Galador was expensive for LEGO to make, far more expensive than any other LEGO theme, since none of the toys used existing elements and every single component required an expensive new mold. In short, LEGO had put all their Project Genesis eggs into the Galador basket, and with the abysmal failure of the line, Galador ended Project Genesis before it could really even begin. And with the end of Galador came the end of years of hopes, dreams, and ideas for the future of the LEGO Group, and served as an incredible lesson for LEGO to reflect on its failures, step back, and analyze what exactly went wrong. And so, this episode of LEGO History ends not with a bang, but with a whimper, much like Galador and Project Genesis itself. But what if Galador had proven successful, and LEGO pivoted to focus on Genesis as their core product line? What new ideas and themes could we have seen from the ill-fated system? Would LEGO be recognizable today? And more importantly, do you wish LEGO gave another crack at the Genesis project, or was it always doomed to fail from the start? Thus ends our first episode of LEGO History, and join us next time as we flash forward to the mid-2000s and explore a time when LEGO Bionicle almost became its own independent company. But that's all for today, and I hope you enjoyed this inaugural episode of LEGO History.
And with that, we have summed up the story of the failed LEGO Project Genesis. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this project? What do you think would have happened to the LEGO Group if this was successful? If Galador took off, would LEGO still be around today, or would LEGO in this form still be around today? It's certainly really interesting to think about, and seeing all the different plans that LEGO had for Genesis are absolutely fascinating. It's so interesting seeing just what could have been if the LEGO Group took a slightly different turn and morphed into a completely different company. The future was the limit in terms of what they were looking at in 2002, and if Galador hadn't failed, we may be in a very different world today. I hope you enjoyed this first LEGO History episode, with many more to come. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming away very soon. Thanks so much, and bye for now.